All right, folks, we're going to get started. I think we have enough people here, and as folks join us, they'll just have to get in where they fit in. But welcome everyone to the Investing in Early Literacy webinar. I'm excited to spend the next 30 minutes diving into how we can better support early literacy through aligned research-based practices. The Early Literacy Network, powered by Skyrocket, started in the fall of 2023 in Philadelphia. And we will be expanding our reach across the nation starting in the 25-26 school year. Our work centers on helping school leaders and educators make meaningful shifts in their literacy programming. So a little bit about me for anyone that doesn't know me. I am Dr. Tiffany Holmes. I've been in every seat in the school system over the last 23 years. I started off as an assistant teacher, and then I became a classroom teacher. Then I was a teacher leader. Then I became an AP, a principal, and then a principal manager. And I bring years of experience leading schools and coaching teams. I have a BA in English. My MS is in curriculum and instruction with a focus on early literacy. I actually did my research study on the impact of reading intervention using Wilson's reading system. Since I was getting Wilson certified, I figured I could kill two birds with one stone. And then I received my doctorate degree in K-12 leadership, and my dissertation was on teacher coaching of novice teachers and the impact on teacher retention. And what drives me is the urgent need to get more students reading on grade level by third grade. And we, the collective we as educators, have the tools to do it. So here's our roadmap for the next 30 minutes. It won't take 30 minutes to get through this, but I'm really excited to share with you and clarify what the science of reading is, take a glance at Scarborough's rope, look at the Early Literacy Network framework that we've created and use as a tool when we're coaching and supporting school systems, and explain how we can help. If you have questions, I'll leave about 5 minutes at the end of this presentation to read and answer whatever questions show up in the Q&A. Okay, and I also have some exciting videos to share of the work that we've been doing over the last 2 years. So let's start off with some data, right? Let's ground ourselves in the why early literacy. Here's a data point, national fourth grade reading scores from 2024. And the big headline is this: 69% of fourth graders are not proficient in reading. And this has a lot of implications. And I just want to highlight 3 of them for now. 1, scores are declining. Average reading scores declined in 2024 for fourth grade students. There was a 5-point drop between 2019 to 2024. And this means a lot of things, but I'd like to point out that our students have not bounced back from the COVID pandemic. The next thing that I want to highlight is that future success is at risk. As educators, everyone here in this webinar already knows that reading is foundational to all subjects, and failure to read well keeps students from accessing information and building knowledge across content areas. And the last thing that I want to highlight is that the gap continues to widen. There are growing gaps between higher performing and lower performing students, and this has been a persistent trend for decades. Now, some call this the achievement gap. I like to deem it as the opportunity gap. And this gap in performance can be further broken down by ethnicity, wealth, and even from state to state. The point here is reading proficiently by third grade is one of the most predictive indicators of long-term success. But far too many students are falling behind, and the earlier we intervene, the more effective we are in changing the landscape and student achievement. So I want to talk about the science of reading, right? So science of reading is one of the latest buzzwords. People have been talking about science of reading. And again, I'm in this webinar with a bunch of seasoned educators. So you may or may not know what the science of reading is, right? But some people think it's a curriculum, some people think it's a program. The science of reading is not a program. It is a body of research on how children learn to read. It is grounded in decades of interdisciplinary studies and tells us what skills need to be taught and how. It is literally brain science. It is evidence-based cognitive science, linguistics, and neuroscience. And so that brings us to balanced literacy. Now, I started teaching in 2002. That's when I was not Teach for America, but I was a New York City teaching fellow, which was a spinoff of TFA. And my first year teaching was in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy before it was gentrified. And our first year, we used Success for All. Our second year, all of that went out the window, and New York City Public Schools adopted reading and writing workshop. And I was a part of that first group of teachers to go to Teachers College once a month and be trained by Lucy Calkins, Fontes and Pinnell themselves. It was literally like watching rock stars. And when I came back and I became the classroom teacher, I implemented the program with fidelity, and I absolutely loved everything about it. My mini lessons were great. Our workshop model was awesome. My level library was beautiful. And I really was bought in. For over 20 years, I was really bought in on balanced literacy. Even though my master's was really grounded in the science of reading. And so as a teacher leader, we really pushed balanced literacy. And it wasn't all bad. However, when my daughter was in first grade and I could see she was struggling with reading, I had to think back and I had to do something, and I had to go back to the basics. And I had to go back and teach her letters, letter sounds, encoding, decoding, all the things. And that's how she became a proficient reader. And so balanced literacy, though well-intentioned, often leaves too much to chance. The science of reading calls for explicit, systematic instruction across all areas of reading development. And so you may or may not have heard of Scarborough's reading rope. Dr. Hollis Scarborough created the reading rope using pipe cleaners to convey how the different strands of reading are all interconnected, yet independent of one another. And this visual represents how skilled reading is woven from many strands into two main strands: word recognition and language comprehension, and how they intertwine to create skilled readers. We can't just teach phonics. We also need to build background knowledge, vocabulary, and comprehension. And I know a lot of times there's scenarios where leaders are needing to get some quick results really fast. And so what they do is they're double dipping in phonics instruction and all this stuff, and then they're leaving out the rest of Scarborough's rope, the rest of the skills. And so then when students are sitting in front of a reading passage or even sitting in front of a book, the skills that they learned from phonics or phonemic awareness is not translating, right? Because they haven't had time sitting in front of a decodable and trying to read and use the skill that they learned in phonics, right? Um, and the same thing with just reading comprehension and how to attack new words. So it's super important that in our reading programs, we are addressing all the strands. So what does that look like? The 5 pillars of literacy as identified by the National Reading Panel are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. These pillars form the foundation of effective reading instruction and are crucial for developing proficient readers. Your block should intentionally develop both strands of Scarborough's reading rope and include all 5 pillars of instruction. This means integrating decoding work with rich, meaningful content and discussion. And so a K2 block could look something like this. So our approach, using the framework that we created, the Early Literacy Instruction Framework, we work directly with leaders and teams to assess current practices. We build clarity and we coach implementation to ensure alignment to the science of reading. And I want you to note that we are curriculum agnostic. Our partners use EL, they use Journeys, MyView, HMH, UFly, Haggerty, Foundations. They subscribe to IXL, they subscribe to iReady, just to name a few. Our focus is on outcomes in alignment to science of reading. And so here's a quote that I pulled from one of our partners, and she said, coaching and support have been instrumental in helping me launch an early literacy initiative at my school. Her, meaning the coach, her guidance in setting clear goals and actionable steps has provided a strong foundation for improving literacy outcomes. Additionally, being part of the PELNet cohort has given me the opportunity to connect with other charter school leaders across Philadelphia. Remember, we started in Philadelphia. We're expanding our reach this upcoming school year. Collaborating on best practices and sharing strategies for leading early literacy efforts has been incredibly valuable in strengthening my leadership and impact on teachers. I also would like to note that school leaders, network leaders are super busy. And so we come in and we actually are on the ground, shoulder to shoulder with leaders, making sure we develop their knowledge in the science of reading. We really dive into whichever curriculum that they used. Like I said, we are curriculum agnostic. You know, so many times I hear folks say, oh, well, this curriculum doesn't really work for us because it assumes that our students are on grade level. And I'm like, well, all curriculum assumes that students are on grade level, right? So that's why you have this big 90-minute block to teach all the different parts of literacy to ensure that, one, you're teaching on grade level, giving kids the skills that they need, and then meeting them where they are in their small group instruction. And so we spend a lot of time observing, auditing, collecting data, looking at the assessments that are being used. And then looking at how the data, all the data that's being collected is being used to make decisions. And then we support leaders and making the shifts that need to be made to impact their literacy programs. And that means PDs for leaders, PDs for teachers, supporting leaders in developing PDs and rolling out initiatives. And I'll show you some videos of what it's looked like in the past, just a few short clips, which won't give a full picture, but give you an idea of what we do. So I want you to take a moment to reflect on where your school is in the transition from balanced literacy to science of reading. Right? What do leaders know? Where do they need support? How much do they know about the science of reading? What do they know about the 5 pillars of literacy? What does the block look like? How is the literacy block being used? Are teachers spending 45 minutes on Haggerty when it should only be 15 minutes, right? Are teachers skipping everything and just spending the entire time on the reading comprehension and not really diving into close reading? Are we missing the WIN block? Some people call it WIN, but that small group instruction, what data is being used? How is all of that playing out, right? How are teachers preparing for lessons? Are they writing lesson plans? Do you have a scripted curriculum? What is the expectation for scripted curriculum? So all these things, I really want you to think about where you are as a network or as a school, and where do you want to be in August, right? How do you want to launch your literacy program? What are some of the skills that you want to start building in your leaders and teachers over the summer to get them ready? And here is another quote. It says, and this is just a quick reflection on results. So she said, my team has doubled its growth metrics through data-driven, I can't see that because my face is in the way, hold on. Data-driven practices, including increased small group instruction and testing, targeted remediation using multiple data points, and goal setting with students. We have moved students across multiple performance indicators in reading. The percentage of proficient and advanced students in kindergarten increased from 13 to 45%, and in first grade from 7 to 25%, and in second grade from 2 to 18%. Now, while these numbers are not nowhere near where we'd like them to be, these are double-digit increases in student proficiency, and this was a midpoint check-in, right? And so they still have to take the end of the year. And I can guarantee that those numbers are going to go up even more, right? And so again, I want to highlight that using multiple data points. This particular leader had a bunch of trackers, they had a bunch of assessments, and I was like, how are we using all of this data? And so we had to really figure out a streamlined way to capture all the data points and then make some very intentional decisions around what data points are used for what. What data are we going to use for small group instruction, right? What data points are we going to use to do a whole class reteach? Because no one got this, and how do we know? Where are we pulling that information from? And so, a lot of times leaders are inundated with data. And so, our job is to sit back and put the puzzle pieces together to help leaders make sense of the data and make smart now and later goals to really move the needle in their student achievement. So I'm going to show a couple of videos. The first 2 videos will be of teachers internalizing some of the curriculum that they're using. So again, part of working with us is we go in and we just observe and see what's happening. And for Haggerty or Foundations, a lot of times teachers weren't getting past like the one routine where they're going through the letter sounds. A, apple, ab, B, bab, buh, right? And nothing else. Or in Haggerty, teachers didn't understand why in the phonemic awareness routine, their hand movements was really important. And so what you'll see is teachers actually internalizing and practicing some Haggerty skill lessons. And here is another one.
When I look around my window, I see a brick wall. There is trash in the courtyard and a broken bottle that looks like fallen stars. Before we move any further, I am.
So what you just saw was a leader PD where the cohort was together, and I had noticed a trend in their read alouds, interactive read aloud, intentional read aloud. People call it different things, but teachers were just like reading the entire book, and then they may stop and ask a question like, what color shoes did they have on? What was the last thing he ate? And there was no real learning objective. There was no modeling of reading skills or anything. And so what I did was I had demoed for them what it should look like. And then their work was to choose two picture books, create lessons where they had stopping points, they had an objective, they did some think alouds, and then practice it with one another. But we went a step further. They also then turnkeyed that to their teachers. And so in their next meeting with their teachers, they did the same thing. They modeled, then they had their teachers prepare. And then for the next couple of weeks after that, I was on the ground with the leaders and observing that part of their literacy block to give teachers immediate feedback, coaching, and support. And so that's a part of what we do. And to the next video so you can see some students. And so, one thing that I would like to say is that, progress, improvement, it's a process. It is not an event. And so I've been working with these leaders for an entire school year and some of them 2 school years. And with all of the curriculum and elements of the literacy block, we really need to take a step back and kind of force rank what is first. And I tell you, this year I prioritized in the beginning of the year foundational skills. What does phonemic awareness and phonics instruction look like? Then we went to the next thing. Then we went to the next thing. And then we went to the next thing. So let's check out some students.
Exact. Take to the side a second and make the last several times for exam.
One more. Way to go, our man.
Again, very quick.
Exact.
We'll go to the next one.
And that extra pen.
So that first video was a first grade foundations lesson. That what you just saw was a kindergarten class. And that teacher was really scaffolding what morning meeting looked like. And so, of course, in the beginning of the year, she started off with reading the morning message, but this was at a point where she was releasing the reading of the morning message to her kindergarten students, which I think is amazing. They weren't fully independent, so she was there to support and help them get through the words, but moving them towards reading fully.
Get it.
Quiet.
Right on top, right on top. Right on top, there's more space.
I'm gonna do it one more time. Go to work.
There you go.
I'm done.
Another kindergarten class.
Remember that A is next to an M, so what does it do? All right, next one.
Now, that was another. Here's a phonemic awareness lesson.
And this word is? How many sounds?
That was a phonemic awareness lesson. Let's look at some small group instruction. Some centers.
Facts. Got it? Everyone say fact. Finger on the first chip. The first sound is. And we move it up into the box. The middle sound is. And the last sound is. The word is. Sadiq, the last sound was. Last sound was. The last sound was. Got it? Our word facts. Got it? Everyone.
That was the teacher rolling out Alconium boxes for the first time with her first group. That was a second grade small group instruction. And that group needed lots of support and scaffolding. So you may have noticed that the words were actually written and they were identifying the letter tiles and rebuilding the words. And then here's that same class with another level group, and they're working on middle sounds on a board game. Awesome. So let's work together. If you're ready to get clear on your literacy block or want to explore where your school stands in relation to science of reading, I'd love to connect. Here's just some of the things that we do. And if you email us at literacy@skyrocketed.org, we'll give you a free copy of our framework for you. But if you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me at Tiffany, TIFFANY, @skyrocketed.org. I said I would leave a couple of minutes at the end for Q&A. Let's see if we have any. I don't think so. I don't see any questions. Oh, there's one question. Okay, let's see. Oh, thank you. That was just somebody giving me some cheers in the background. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oops, let's get to the next slide. All right, so if you want more, I just want to add that we can just come to your school and just do a single audit. We do school culture audits, we do literacy and instructional audits. And, you know, we can come, take a look, interview some stakeholders, put together a report with some recommendations for next steps for your school and your network. if you'd like us to do that, and sometimes that's all people want. But I definitely encourage you to reflect more on where your literacy block is and what support you need, right? It takes a bunch of us. Many hands make light work, and we're here for you. Thank you for joining today. The work you're doing is vital. Let's keep investing in early literacy because the return is lifelong. Oh, I think I saw some more questions, but I am actually, let's see what we got here. Two questions I'll ask. Well, one question I'll answer really quickly. It says, is your training focused solely on implementation, or can it be more on phonics-based training for teachers? And so the answer to that is we like to do a holistic approach, because if your phonics instruction is lacking, I'm pretty sure the phonemic awareness is also needs some attention. And then how does that play out in your win period? Whether you have it every day for 15, 20 minutes, or you have it 2, 3 days a week. And so, we can definitely start with phonics instruction, get that really, really tight. But I imagine that will be the tip of the iceberg before, you actually start to yield the results that you want to see in teacher expertise and student achievement. So again, reach out to me. We can talk it through. I can do an audit, make recommendations, and then you can go from there and decide what you might or may not be interested in. Thank you all so much for joining. It's past 11:30, 3 minutes. I apologize. I know your time is so precious. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, and it's going to be a beautiful weekend. Enjoy that as well. Have a great day, everyone. Boom. And peace out.